Hi, my name is Shelley Hendry. Welcome to this workshop entitled Hospitality, an experience to enrich lives. Your life, your children's lives, your family lives, and the lives that God brings through your doors, to your front porch or your parlor or your fireside or your backyard. Hospitality is a wonderful gift, and I'm so thankful for it. It's been extended to us and our family for many years, and now we have the privilege of extending it to others. So welcome to my home, Memory Lane in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I hope many of you will be coming through that door in the coming days or months or years, and we can share life together. That's hospitality. It's not an event that causes you to have a nervous breakdown. It's not an opportunity for us to show off. It certainly is far too exhausting to try to keep up with the Joneses. How about just invite the Joneses over, and the Smiths and the Franklins and other people that God brings your way. So I've been inspired to do this workshop by people through my life who've extended hospitality to me and to my family. And that was a pretty brave thing when I had 6 children traveling all over, staying in homes. But it's been one of the most soul-enriching, life-enriching experiences of our lives. And now that my husband's in heaven and my 6th of my 6 children is about to launch from homeschool, I am more excited than ever to invite people to my home. And I'd like to dedicate this session to a number of people who've influenced me, but I want to start with a story. And it's the revival of the teapot. I brought my teapot to show you. And recently, here in our home, during the coronavirus, we have been setting up a number of things, homeschooling workshops and getting our home even more ready for hospitality and redoing offices. And we've just finished a building out back that we're finishing up to extend our outreach to people. And so I was praying. I thought, I really want a teapot. I had forgotten somehow that I even had a teapot somewhere, and it was lost and I couldn't remember. And so I prayed and I asked God, I said, Lord, I really would like a new teapot. And I don't necessarily need to go out and buy one right now. But Lord, if you want me to have one, would you bring it to me? And so about 3 or 4 days later, I was working in the kitchen. We were doing all this work here at our home. And I thought, what did I pray for? And I couldn't remember. I just knew there was some prayer out there that I was waiting for. And I thought, I don't remember what it was. And just quietly, it came to me. You don't have to remember. God remembers. And I thought, okay, if I need it, he'll remember that I need it and what the prayer was and so forth. Not 45 seconds later, I went out to my I have a little office on the back sunroom. Here was a teapot. It was already there on my own work desk, and I had just forgotten about it because I'd been doing other things, and it was a new one, and I had forgotten that I put it there, forgotten I bought it. And I actually had bought one for me and one for my best friend. And it was as though the Lord just let me know, all that you need, I have and will provide. He had already provided the teapot. I had just forgotten about it. And so it goes with hospitality. It's sort of a lost and forgotten art, but it's commanded in Scripture to be hospitable to strangers. But when your life has been so deeply enriched and impacted, as mine has and my family's has by hospitality, you will understand my enthusiasm for this workshop. I'm passionate about it, and I've been influenced by so many women to be passionate about it. So the first thing I want to do is, first of all, let you know that there is a Christian hospitality network, and I'll be putting more information from this workshop that I don't get to now or that I'm adding. If you go to my blog, shelleyhendry.com, I have some blog spots there that go with these different workshops and other workshops. And so there is where I'll put the workshop. I'll put a link there, and then various resources. But there is a wonderful Christian ministry called Candle in the Window. And it's a wonderful, wonderful ministry where you and your family can have people into your home for either a conversational dinner or a meal, an overnight. And so as my husband and I and our children have traveled in ministry, we have been able to stay in homes all over this country. It's actually an international network, and I'm so excited to share it with you. But I'd like to first dedicate my talk to Corrie ten Boom's mother. I remember reading in I think it was in the hiding place, in my father's house, how her family was always hospitable, and how her father and mother were always bringing people home with them, and they didn't have a lot of money, but they would always have room at the table. More water in the soup and maybe an extra place, and how wonderful that was. And she writes about that. And I particularly remember her telling the story of how some soldiers were in their parlor, and she began to sing about being I think it was a lost sheep and her sinful life, and how the shepherd found her, and a little girl there singing with all her might. And a soldier said to her, "And what is this great sin that you have done, my little one?" And Corey said, well, she couldn't really think at that moment exactly what the great sin was. "I was just singing the song." And he said, "Yes, but I have been wandering too long. And I think tonight I let the shepherd find me." And so it was that the shepherd found a soldier that was a guest in their home that night, because a little singing girl was singing in the parlor because her mother had opened the home. And so I rejoice. And if we have time at the end of this session, or perhaps another session on my blog, I want to read to you about how she led 2 nurses to the Lord because they extended hospitality to her. And she tells in this wonderful story how after church time, 2 young nurses approached her and invited her for coffee and refreshments. And she had to cry out to God for the number of steps to go up to the top of this apartment building where they were, and how the Lord prompted her that at the top of the stairs will be a great blessing. And so it was, she tells how she prayed with these 2 nurses, and they gave their hearts to the Lord. And so I thought, there'll be a lot of steps that you'll have to climb getting your home ready often to have guests, but it'll be worth it because there'll be a blessing. Now, we've had a lot of guests in our home, some not so much of a blessing, others great blessing. But I think of Edith Schaefer in her wonderful book, The Art of Homemaking, and how she describes there, and in the book Labrie, how they're opening their home to the disenfranchised and the disillusioned, and the precious young people who, after the turmoil of the 60s, were groping and grasping for truth and reality and meaning, how she and Dr. Schaefer would open their home in the Alps to these young people, and how so many of them were led to the Lord and or strengthened in their faith, and the wonderful work. I'd urge you to read that work. And I've heard it said that perhaps as many people came to know the Lord by Edith Schaefer's cinnamon rolls as they did by Dr. Schaefer's lectures. He would make lectures in their living room, and they would be recorded, and the young people would just be gathered all around hearing. And it was the theology plus the orthodoxy and orthopraxy of practicing hospitality that God mightily used. And she's with the Lord now, and I'd like to see many other people take on that mantle. I can think of so many travels that we were literally encouraged, strengthened, fed, warmed, and filled by wonderful Christians. I think, and I want you to think about this story with me. We had left a speech and debate tournament in, I think it was in Wisconsin. And we left later than we should, but I had met some believers at the speech and debate tournament and was just talking with them about, wondered if we could stay with them next time we were in town or stay with them. And she had said to me, well, you can stay with us this trip. And I had, grabbed a piece of paper with her phone number and stuffed it in my pocket or my purse or something. And when we got ready to leave that tournament, we hit a blizzard. It was unbelievable. The snow was laid down on the road so fast, I thought, why in the world didn't I leave sooner? I think we were waiting to hear for some tournament results. Very poor decision on my part. And I remember somehow through prayer and grasping, we found that piece of paper. We called these believers and we said, can we please stay with you tonight? And they said, sure, come on. I think we had just met them at this tournament. I don't think I'd met them before. I might be mistaken. Maybe I'd met them at a different tournament, maybe the year before or something. Anyways, met them once. And so I remember watching that snow and that ice lay down. It was only maybe an hour and a half from the tournament to get there. And literally crying out to God the whole time, thinking, I got to get off. I was terrified. And finally we got to their exit and I had to pray my way there. The boys were praying in the car and it was ice and I didn't think we were ever going to find it. Meanwhile, these believers were on the phone and I remember finally going over all this ice and snow and pulling into their driveway and thinking, thank God I made it here. I want to be there for others. I'd like to encourage all of my listeners, readers, blog friends to think there's still a blizzard going on. There's tsunamis. And maybe we can't visit right now in the midst of the coronavirus, but there'll be coming days that we can help people who are in the storms of life and who are in the blizzards to find rest, courage, and hope to go on, and a good meal along the way. I think of one night I was having a ladies' fellowship here. And I have ladies' fellowships here, and I invite everybody. Everyone's welcome. Sometimes I often like to invite unbelievers to come so I can show them a Christian home. And I remember one night we did this, and someone came that I don't even remember meeting. I, to this day, don't know how they got here. Probably I'd met them somewhere and put them on some Google list to email for future events. And as this last person, I think maybe this was the last or next last person that left, she turned and looked at me and she said, you know, I've seen this house before. She hadn't been to my home before. And she said, one night I was traveling and it was so dark and it was a storm or something. And she said, I'd lost my way and I couldn't figure out where I was and I'd lost my bearings. But suddenly I looked up and I recognized now it was your window that had a light in it. And I remember distinctly, I had a little candelabra that had a battery-operated bulb in it. And the bulb was too high a wattage for that particular bulb. And so I remember thinking, wow, this really shines too much. But I left it in the window. That is exactly what she had seen. And she said, I saw the light. And I had just enough light to figure out where I was. And then I kept traveling. That's what a Christian home can provide, a light to help others find their way and to keep going on their journey. That's what I'd like. In the memory of Edith Schaefer, in the memory of Corrie ten Boom and Corrie ten Boom's mother. Those are the people that have so impacted me. I think too of this book, We Didn't Know They Were Angels, Hospitality Even When It's Inconvenient. And the wonderful story opening up here of the Gregg family and how she recounts it was laundry day and all she was planning to have, I think, was beans, wieners, and carrot sticks. And at 4:30 that afternoon, her husband calls and says, there's a woman in my office from South Africa. I'd like to bring her home for dinner. And she says, my first reaction was to scream or cry. How could he do this to me? I wanted to shout. It was at that moment all my spirituality went down the drain, and as calmly as possible, I tried to explain to Bill that this was my laundry day and I had wieners and beans planned for dinner. I told him I didn't have the time or the energy to go to the store for anything else, nor did I have any food to supplement or make changes in this slapped together meal. He, on the other hand, was so enthusiastic when he heard that we were having wieners and beans, he couldn't believe it. And it goes on to a wonderful story. Perhaps I can read it in its full. How this woman years later recounted it was one of the best evenings she'd ever spent with anybody because she just so longed for a Christian visit. And it's just a wonderful story that reminds us of Hebrews 13:12, to not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels unaware. And she writes here, hospitality can take many shapes and forms. We need to pray, God, please make me willing to see and then grasp the opportunities you send my way. And she tells what a blessing it was that night for my children to be exposed to another country and cultures through this woman sharing her evening. In a few brief moments before I called them to dinner, my children were given a larger view of the world through this woman Yvonne's pictures and conversations. She recounts here the wonderful events of that evening. Perhaps I can put more on my blog. So I think of Yvonne with a large family, and it was laundry day, and yet she found a way to open her home. Now, it's clear from the book that she was a disciplined and organized homemaker, but even if she wasn't, she opened her heart and home. I think, too, of two stories that come to my mind about hospitality. One I'll call the horror story, and one I'll call the something else story. But I had been speaking at a large event, a leadership event in another city, and had driven up with a group of children who were part of a program that I was presenting for a leadership conference. And I was at that time maybe 6.5, 7 months pregnant with triplets. and really was going to drive all the way home, and it was a fur piece. And so a mutual friend of this other family said, hey, I'm staying at so-and-so's house. Why don't you, I'll see if you could stay there too. And I remember thinking, wow, how nice of them to open up their home to me. And they, so somehow I showed up there. I hadn't met the people. There was a hasty introduction, and then for the rest of the evening and the next day, I was ignored. Now, granted, they were part of the conference. They were busy. I remember seeing their dining room table was all full of things. But I was 6.5 months pregnant. I never got a towel or an offer of food or a drink of water or coffee or anyone even telling me where to find anything. So I don't judge them, but I want to say maybe that wouldn't be the best example. But I think of another time. This is the most amazing story. We were down in Louisiana for a speech and debate tournament, and there were 2 families with similar last names that were recommended to us by a mutual friend. And so the mutual friend said, I think I'm going to put you at so-and-so's house. And our family at that time was doing a lot of hospitality too. I'm going to send you to so-and-so's house. And then called back later and said, well, I think you would be a better fit for so-and-so. So we went to the second so-and-so, and we knocked on the door, and they said, hi, are you, we're the so-and-sos. She had never made the second call in all the excitement of the tournament to the second family who weren't expecting anybody, but I have never felt more at home, probably in anybody's home. And she had a large family. Their house was very imperfect in terms of there were renovations going on, lots of garden and chickens in the back, and lots of people, lots of moving schedules. But the first girl, one of the girls there said, immediately took her things out of her room and gave us her room. And the next thing I know, while we're talking, somebody's in there putting out towels, candles, books, new clothes. It was the most amazing thing. And they weren't even expecting us. Now, there was a time a couple of years ago, we called also and said, hey, we're coming through. Can we stay? And they said, not a good time, but thanks. Let us know another time. So no's a good word. No is definitely a good word. But I still remember this wonderful family and the friendships that were established. And I remember how much I wanted to be a blessing to them and still do. And I think of another family. I was in Texas, and they had never had anybody in their home before, and they were a little nervous about doing it. I'd gone down to speak at a conference. And I remember walking in their, I think it was their library school, and they had transformed it. And there were candles by the bed and fresh towels and chocolate on the door and a little book and reading material and snacks and tea. If you want to open your home, you don't have to do all that. It was wonderful. It was nice. But every mother can't do that. I actually have 2 friends that had nervous breakdowns over hospitality. I don't want that to happen. But in both of their cases, it was for a long time. They had large families. I think it was 1 or 2 weeks for both of them. One was having to provide meals for 20 some people for over 1 or 2 weeks, 3 meals a day with her large family because they were doing a ministry in that town. The other one was entertaining dignitaries or high-profile people and had to have fancy dinners night after night after night. They both had meltdowns. So please, I don't want this hospitality workshop to cause anybody to have a nervous breakdown, but it can give perspective in that it doesn't have to be perfect or nothing, because then you get nothing and nobody even gets the beans and wieners. But it can be a wonderful evening where you have a pot of soup, or we have wonderful Aldi, keep it ready, canned soup, throw in some more chicken stock. That can be on my blog. Cinnamon rolls and candles. And then it could also be something more elaborate. But whatever God gives you the grace to do, you can do it. Because remember, if it's perfect or nothing, it's usually nothing for the people who would have been so grateful for a palate and a warm bowl of soup and a good night hug. Ask God to guide you, because it's such a wonderful, wonderful ministry. I think of Rosaria Butterfield. She's one of the leading spokesmen in ministering to people in the LBGT community. She has a new book, and I meant to check on it before I started the workshop. Maybe Love Has a Door Key, but look up Rosaria Butterfield. Her new book on hospitality is wonderful. I commend that to you. I also commend, I don't know if I meant to say this one, yes, Doris Gregg's We Didn't Know They Were Angels, Hospitality When It's Inconvenient. And then I've got this one, The Christian Bed and Breakfast Directory. And I mentioned to you Candle in the Window. And then I have this book that someone sent me, because I used to do these big teas for ladies, which I hope to start doing again, called English Tea and Cakes. Now, don't let this overwhelm me, because you don't have to do any of this to have a nice evening. But it is kind of fun, and you can always buy things and just serve them. We've done a lot. I did a workshop one time, the White House hospitality, I think I called it, without the purse or staff. And it was just about simple ways. I'm going to try to load that on my blog, that workshop I did another time. But this is a wonderful way for families to join together and be a blessing to others. We try to keep an open home here and we try to keep our home 1 or 2 hours away from hospitality as a cleanliness level, so if somebody shows up, we can still accommodate them and do the best we can. So far, nobody's ever complained. I remember one time we had a family here of 14, and I just left and gave them the house. And when I came back, my house looked better than it did when they came. I was working 2 jobs at the time, didn't have anywhere near the time or energy to get it to where I wanted it, but I welcomed them with a smile. I was genuinely delighted to see them. I did everything within my gift to make them feel welcome, and I hope saved them 2 hotel bills for 2 nights for a large family. They did give me a blessing, a financial blessing when it was over. I wasn't looking for that, but it helped. It sure helped as a single mom. So it's just and I just think of the memories that we made together, singing together in the living room before they left. Enriching lives, mine, theirs, their children's. I have a little object lesson here called Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost, J.R. Tolkien. And it's a travel journal, and I would like to be a part of many people's travel journal, that they remember coming into my home and being blessed. I think about Elizabeth Elliot, my hero of heroes, and how hospitable her mother was. I've read about that in her book, The Shaping of a Christian Family. And she talks about that when she was a little girl, I think she was 10 years old, Betty Scott Stam came to stay with them. And she remembers the deep impression it made on her, Mrs. Stam's testimony, her heart for the Lord. And I think she says Mrs. Stam, who went on to be a missionary to China, wrote something in her Bible. And years later, when Betty Scott Stam was murdered by the communists, beheaded actually, that made a very deep impression on Mrs. Elliot and was instrumental in her making a really full consecration to the Lord. And I just think of that, wonderful story. I think about, too, part of my impetus is that in Pilgrim's Progress, there's a wonderful scene where Pilgrim goes to what's called the Palace Beautiful, and he's entered in. I've actually got it in this book. I've been reading it, where he goes into a room at the Palace Beautiful, and it's where they show him the Aaron's rod, and they show him the stones and the swords and different symbols of the Christian life as object lessons. And it gives him hope and encouragement and perspective and kind of lets him know what's to come. And the family that runs this home, Palace Beautiful, one of the matrons, maybe Piety, Prudence, or Charity, says, it's part of my job in service for the King to make this home and care for the pilgrims that he sends this way. That's part of my job. That's what I hope is part of many of your life purposes and life callings. One of my favorite memories of hospitality was a precious friends of ours, and they had a little building out the back of their house. It was a little tough shed, and they'd finished it out for overflow guests. Didn't even have a bathroom. And I remember staying there for one of the happiest anniversaries. We had a large family and a limited budget. We stayed there and had a wonderful time. And they had a nice breakfast for us in the morning, and they let us know when, where to come in to use the restroom in the home. My sons and I have actually done the same thing. If you come here, we've got a little building out back. Don't have a bathroom in yet, but we're working on a second one. And people can come here and stay. We've had people come in 10 or 11 o'clock at night exhausted. We say bed down, and then away they go. So it's a wonderful, and you can do it on a shoestring budget. And you can make pallets. We even put in carpet upstairs when we were finishing out our home, because I thought, we hope to have a lot of families here. It's expensive to refinish floors. A lot of work would have had to been done. So we put a carpet down up there, and we can make pallets and make a place for people, make a place in our heart and home, like in Pilgrim's Progress in the Palace Beautiful. I've also got these object lessons here that I brought, and one is called the book The Valley of Vision, and the other is Friends and Friendship. And I think these two go together. Many people that come through our home can gain a vision for a greater commitment to the Lord, or a greater way to serve Him, or we can introduce them to the concept of hospitality, or we can encourage them in the Lord. So sometimes when people come, maybe often have to be prepared for counseling, that people may have real needs. And so it's a way to open up our heart and mind and life to give them encouragement. It's a part of friendship, and to entertain strangers and to befriend them in a wonderful way. I've often said, I want all my friends to be friends with all my other friends. And hospitality is a way to do that. And we have been so enriched that we can travel to different places and stay with other believers. And I haven't always been successful at it. There are times when I have broken things and not responded the right way. There's people who've come to our home and broken our things and left them broken. And that's not really, we forgive them, it's fine, but that would be maybe on the blog. I'll put helpful suggestions for being a good guest. And I've made more than my share of mistakes. But still, I think back to my fondest memories of being in homes. Just this past year, I went to Texas, and I gave a talk on ministry skills, and a friend of mine of 30 years came. And she was part of my inspiration because the talk was on ministry skills, and I began to write things on the board that said tying shoelaces, fixing a pot of soup, cutting bread and biscuits, cleaning the bathroom, laying out clean linens, putting up signs. I wrote all the things that would actually pertain to having people in your home and just having like a ministry of helps. And the woman who'd been to me the most hospitable, I think probably the first ever real Christian home I'd ever gone in, was there. I'd invited her. She was from Texas. And I still remembered always feeling welcome in her home, and she always looked beautiful and it smelled good, and she was always cooking something delicious. And then when she came to visit me, she would always bring something. And she's in her 70s now, more wonderful than ever. I'm dedicating it to UK if you ever watch this. And I'm going to go, I hope, when the coronavirus is lifted, and spend some time there writing. And I can't wait just to see the beauty in her home and the beauty in her heart, in her life. And she has been such an encourager to me all these years. She was the one that I called when we got our new home and said, we're getting ready to have a home dedication. Will you pray with us? And I think I got the idea from her years ago. They had come to our home and we'd anointed the tops of the doors with oil and dedicated our home to the Lord. We did that here, and she was part of it. It's a wonderful, wonderful outreach of friendship and graciousness. I think about John Ruskin, and he was a foremost thinker in England in the late 19th century, and he had a beautiful home in the Lake District. And I don't know that his hospitality would be as open-hearted, maybe as I would have wished, but it was there that the leading minds of the day met together and had refreshments and coffees and meals and talked one with another. And great political, there were political ramifications of that. There were cultural and social ramifications because those were the leaders of the day. Well, I would like to submit that we perhaps are entertaining the leaders of the day, because we can bring into our home the weary, the friendless, the people who want to give up and won't tell you that, the people who really don't have money for staying in hotels. I remember one time we were traveling in Northern Virginia, and we were out of money, and we were doing ministry, and we weren't charging anybody, and we didn't have any money. And one of my sons, I don't think if he knew how bad it was, said, Mom, I'll give you some money out of my account. And I remember pulling up to a Dairy Queen. This is hospitality extended in a different, and this was a mother of 9 or 10 children, Beth, if you're watching. And she came to the Dairy Queen and bought us all a dinner. And I don't think she had much to spare. She's the one that paid for me to stay in a hotel when I was speaking somewhere and so exhausted, didn't really have money for hotels. She paid for me to stay in a hotel. We have another family, when we travel, they often get our hotels. And it's their gift. And if their home isn't ready, they get us a hotel. She did not know that night that literally she's what kept us going. And she didn't have room in her trailer for us, but she bought us dinner. And somehow things turned around from then on. And the next stop, there was a love offering. It kept us going on our road. So there's so many ways to show hospitality. It's just a wonderful, wonderful gift. And it's a way to enrich everybody's life and to put the teapot on. And to, I hope, if I may do this object lesson, to extend hospitality in the name of Christ, to live, laugh, love, and worship. I think of Gladys Aylward, missionary to China, and how her initial missionary work was inviting men from China to come into the inn. We have food, we are clean, we don't have fleas. And she'd grab them by the bridle of the mule train and drag them in, and how the Lord used that. And they would come in and tell Bible stories to them and teach them about the Lord. And then their dream was that those same muleteers would travel across the mountaintops of China, spreading the good news. And then how when Gladys Aylward began to take into her home war orphans and eventually took 100 of them over the mountains because Madame Shanghai Czech had promised, if you can get them here, we'll take care of them. So the promise of hospitality from Madame Shanghai Czech of China, allegedly a Christian woman, helped one woman with 100 children keep taking hill after hill after hill. And that's what I'd like to do. That's the kind of woman that I would like to be, is to help people traverse and make it over the next hill. I think of how much I'm hoping this year to fill up my home with internationals. One year, my great joy was to have the Chinese internationals from University of Tennessee, a university here in this town, come and spend Christmas with us. And I was a little nervous, to have what it takes. But by God's grace, they came. We had a wonderful time. They brought their Chinese food. I had my American food. Some of it wasn't homemade. It was from Dollar Tree and Aldi in little dishes. Ladies, you don't have to fix it homemade. You can go to Dollar Tree and Aldi and get delicious foods and just put it in beautiful dishes from Goodwill. Oh, the tips I could tell you about hospitality by thrift to make our lives more enriching, and to get over the idea that it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect or nothing, you usually get nothing. I think about the stories we can tell. This is the Bible's impact on famous lives. If you're not sure what to do, read around the fire, the mighty acts of God. Help others to go on climbing by sharing, as is in this book, true stories, answers to prayer in the lives of great missionaries of the past. Have a home for the disenfranchised. This is a story of Christopher Wan, whom God has graciously brought out of the LBGT movement. And one of the things that he says and Rosaria Butterfield say is that in the LBGT community, they are meeting a very real and legitimate need for community and hospitality. Because as Rosaria says in her book, in that community, when she was in that community, she had someone to talk to. And every night of the week, a home would be open to her. And she could talk to people about her pets or her illness or her cold, because that community was more welcoming. Oh, may we be used of God to help many who were caught up in that particular sin or any sin to come to our home and feel loved and welcomed. I remember one girl in particular. She'd had a very rough background and had many sins. And when she came to our home, I welcomed her. I really, in my heart of hearts, welcomed her and prayed with her on the front porch to overcome many, many things. And she said to me, the voices in my head, the voices in my head, when I get to the door, they stop. They can't come inside the door. I remember I made up jobs for her to do, because I wanted her to feel a part of our life. And I remember one time she was helping me file, and she was looking at the names of some of my files. And she said, I don't even know people like this, like you. And I thought, oh, I want to be your friend. I think of a young woman who would come to my workshops sometimes and my teas, and she would linger and linger before leaving. And finally I said to her, do you have people you can talk over your difficulties with at home in your community? Do you have friends? And she said, I have you. Well, ladies, hospitality is a wonderful God-given ministry that we can have. It helps reach out to those who have the painful path of a prodigal, because we give them a happy place that they can come and feel welcomed and loved and known and heard. And there's a great power in it, the power of an open heart, an open hand, and an open house. I think about Edith Schaefer and how even when hobos would come to her door, she would give them a platter, maybe a tray with a beautiful meal and flowers and a New Testament. And her children would say, Mama, why are you doing that? And she said, well, maybe when he was growing up, he had a Christian home, and maybe this beauty and this food, and this will help him to want to take up the New Testament and read it. So that's the power of hospitality, that we open up our homes, our hearts, and our lives, and we, as it were, light a candle in the window and in the window of our heart, and come in, share life with me. We may just have beans and wieners. There may or may not be a blizzard outside, but there will always be storms. And there will always be people who need a light and a reminder to live and laugh and love and to stop and smell the flowers and to share life and its fragrance of shared prayers before the throne of God. Hospitality. It enriches our lives. It can glorify God. And it can be used of God for evangelistic outreach and spiritual strengthening for the saints as we welcome people into our home and say to them, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt His name together." And may God use it in our lives for His kingdom purposes, that even more people who have come through the doors of our home and come into our heart and with whom we've shared the good news will be able to sing with us and join us around the throne of God, singing blessing and honor and glory and power be unto Him that sitteth upon the throne of God and the Lamb. Come ye and worship. And remember Lilias Trotter, that wonderful watercolor artist of the 19th century. And remember this, that when she was dying and getting ready to go home, she looked up and she said, I see a chariot and 6 horses. What else do you see? Oh, I see many, many beautiful things. May our homes open up all who enter to the many, many beautiful things of our loving, living God. I hope to see many of you soon in your home or in mine. God be with you.